Less than a week now to the Queensland election. With me, LNP Senator James McGrath and Labor Senator Murray Watt. Senator McGrath, first to you. I guess that Victorian news again, it's just a reminder they're still trying to come out of lockdown. Queensland has been a huge contrast to that, and that really goes to the centre of the Palaszczuk campaign, doesn't it? That she's kept Queenslanders safe. That's been her message.
Labor and Palaszczuk are using coronavirus as an alibi to cover up the last 5 years of doing nothing. Queensland at the beginning of the year had the highest unemployment in the country. In fact, it had the highest unemployment for the last 4 years. And so what Palaszczuk is doing, that's all she's got going for, is using coronavirus, running a scare campaign on the borders, running a scare campaign on coronavirus. There's only one party going into this election who've got a plan for the future, and that's Deb Frecklington and the LNP.
Murray, the fact is Deb Frecklington has also said repeatedly that she will follow the health advice. When there was the outbreak in Melbourne, she changed her position to say, look, close the borders. Even though Labor's trying to say she's weak on borders, she's been fundamentally the same.
Well, Deb Frecklington over many months now has been out of step with both the health advice provided to the Queensland Government and with the overwhelming majority of Queenslanders' views. Deb Frecklington and the LNP called for our borders to be open 64 times at a time when the health advice to the Queensland Government was very clear that we shouldn't do so. Had we followed Deb Frecklington's advice, we may well have found ourselves in exactly the same position that Victoria is in now. And that's why we're saying to people, don't risk someone like Deb Frecklington, who wasn't prepared to follow health advice when it mattered, who would have opened our borders, and who now has an agenda to cut, just like she did when she was part of Campbell Newman's government.
It's not just about COVID. If you look at, let's look at a couple of seats. Townsville, Mundingborough, among those North Queensland seats, James McGrath, where youth crime is a massive issue. And Deb Frecklington in the last week announcing quite a blunt policy of evening curfews for young Queenslanders. How's that going to go down?
Well, I was in Townsville on Friday, and people were coming up to the booths, coming up to the LNP volunteers there, praising Deb, praising the local candidates for their tough stance on crime. Youth crime in Townsville and Cairns is out of control, and this is just another example of a practical but sensible measure from Deb Frecklington of the LNP of how to deal with issues. What's Labor's approach to youth crime in Townsville? Do nothing. Absolutely do nothing. So here you've got a Deb Frecklington who's got this high energy plan to focus on jobs across all of Queensland, but where there are specific local and regional issues like youth crime in Cairns and Townsville, it's bringing forward practical and sensible measures. And that's what people want to see from their politicians, not politicking, which is what Palaszczuk has been doing with coronavirus.
Senator Watt, do you accept that is a vulnerability and those seats are looking vulnerable for Labor around the Townsville area?
Look, certainly the seats around Townsville are much more difficult for us to win than some of the seats in the southeast corner. Having said that, I think that Townsville residents are also looking to the sort of positive jobs plan that Anastasia Palaszczuk and her team have. They also respect the fact that Anastasia Palaszczuk kept Queenslanders safe and kept North Queenslanders safe through the COVID epidemic. What I've found as I've travelled throughout Queensland is the further you get into the regions, the more adamant people have been that our borders should be closed. Crime has been an issue in Townsville over a period of time, but the feedback that I've been getting about Deb Frecklington's promise is that it just won't work. You've had even police officers in Townsville come out and say that they don't want to be responsible for ferrying young people around at night when they've actually got other work to do. What the Anastasia Palaszczuk's government has done is increase police resources into Townsville and other areas, as it has done in other parts of the state. And again, the contrast is clear with Deb Frecklington. The only way Deb Frecklington can bring the budget back to surplus in 4 years, which is what she's promising to do, is to cut police services, cut hospitals, cut schools, which is exactly what she did when she was a core part of Campbell Newman's government.
Let's look at some of those southeast seats. Gavin, held by ALP with 0.7%. Gavin's in the hinterland electorate, northern Gold Coast. Then there's, we've got Mansfield there as well, covering the outer southeast Brisbane suburbs of Mansfield, Upper Mount Gravatt and Rochedale. These areas, again, Labor 1.6%. Are we seeing a tale of two election campaigns right now, James McGrath? Those seats in the southeast, Labor much more confident of holding, if not expanding their margins and possibly picking up one or two from the LNP on the Gold Coast.
Oh, well, that's not my experience of having campaigned in Mansfield with our candidate Janet Wishart, or in Gavin with our candidate Kirsten Jackson. These seats are going to be very tough. They're held by Labor. They're Labor marginals. They're seats that we've held before. I think on the night you're going to see a swing to the LNP in these seats because of the work done by Deb Frecklin and the LNP with our plan for jobs, but also the work done by the brilliant local candidates like Kirsten and Janet, who've been out door knocking, have been out listening and also starting to deliver for people, and they're not even the MPs yet.
Yeah, all right, Murray, what's your sense of things? Is it a tale of two election campaigns, given how well received? And I've heard it from voters, repeatedly in various reports from the region. I'll be there on Wednesday for the Leaders Forum. It's going to be interesting to see what those undecided voters at the Broncos say to the leaders. But what's your sense of people, resonating? Is that campaign from Labor resonating with voters that Palaszczuk has kept them safe?
I think it absolutely is. I've now drawn up personally in probably 7 or 8 seats across the state, and I've got to tell you, the very first thing that people raise with you is how grateful they are that Anastasia took tough decisions around our borders. It's not necessarily the only factor that everyone is weighing up, but I've never seen such an overwhelmingly positive mood towards a Queensland government in probably 15 or 20 years. I don't want to sound complacent. It's absolutely far from one, and there's a lot of people who'll be voting on other factors, but overwhelmingly people think that Anastasia and her team have done the right thing, and they have confidence that that the Labor government is also the person and the group to guide us back out of recession. I think that the problem that the LNP has is that at every level, whether it be Deb Frecklington or right up to Scott Morrison, they've been intensely critical of Anastasia Palaszczuk and Labor. And there's a lot of people that I've come across who actually think the Premier's done a good job in standing her ground under immense pressure and keeping Queenslanders safe.
And so for the final week, James McGrath, Deb Frecklington will continue her message that she'll improve the job situation and combat youth crime. Are they fundamentally the two key messages in the final week?
What you're going to see from Deb and the LNP and all our candidates is the continuation of a high energy campaign focusing on jobs, focusing on our economic plan to protect and build jobs in Queensland. You're also going to see a focus on youth crime in Cairns and Townsville, but you're just going to see high energy people getting out there. We're also going to see increased pre-poll voting, especially on the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Deb was in Bundaberg last night. She's going to continue going around the state, pushing and beating the drum for the LNP. We are the underdog going into this campaign. Labor brought in a financial gerrymander that makes your eyes water in terms of how they've tipped the scales in their advantage. So we're in with a fighting chance to make Deb Frecklington Premier on the 31st of October. Labor have been in power for 25 out of the last 30 years. They're using coronavirus as an alibi. They're using the border wars as to scare people. My experience out on the ground is that people want Deb to become Premier. They really understand her practical and sensible policies, so it's all to play for.
Senator James McGrath and Senator Murray Watt, great to see you both. Thanks.